Gilda Perez-Alvarado, thank you so much for being here and welcome to the Creative Room. Thank you so much for coming over. I met you through your role as the CEO of Orient Express, but I realized after that you do much more than this. You are also the Group Chief Strategy Officer at Accor. You have board positions. The real question is, when someone at a dinner party asks you what you do, what do you actually say?
First of all, Youri, thank you very much for having me here. You know what? I answer, it depends on the day. No, I'm kidding. I always answer with, I work for Accor, and then I explain that I have two roles. One as Chief Strategy Officer, where I focus predominantly on investors and owners. And really, it's a bridge to what I used to do before, which was hospitality real estate investment. And then another hat, which is a very privileged hat, and it's a surprised hat, which is being the CEO of Orient Express.
We'll speak about both a little bit after, but if we first look back, you mentioned what I did before. So you spent nearly, I saw, 2 decades at GLL. So you advise some of the world's most iconic asset sales. Now you're on the other side, so to speak, building a brand rather than transacting on the asset. What does this shift felt for you culturally in terms of work, dynamic, etc.? Or what's the pros and the cons? Tell us the truth.
Listen, I would say if somebody were to ask me right now, what is one of the things you're the most proud of, I would say, number one, being brave and always saying yes. And, doing a shift after, doing 2 decades in hospitality real estate and 19 years at my former home where I literally grew up there. It takes a lot of courage for you to leave a very comfortable life where you dominate your subject matter, where you know the ecosystem. And so I decided to say yes to this phenomenal opportunity at Accor, where I did have to, switch everything, companies, culture, language, same industry, but different side. So it was a very vulnerable moment. And the reason why I did it, Youri, is because I wanted to learn something else. I wanted to add more tools to my skill set, add more skills to my skill set. And that was it. I was very curious. And so I think, when you approach things in that way, in that frame of mind, you're more forgiving to yourself at the beginning because you're learning and you're observing and you're acquiring all the context. And now looking back, I don't think I would have traded any of it the last 3 years for anything.
No way you go back to transactions?
I never say never, huh? I love what I did. I love what I did. It was an amazing sport, amazing people, lots of action. And I would say the part that I loved about it the most, which there's some of that in my role, it was a global job. I don't want to I don't want to specialize in any one market. I do like to see our industry and our ecosystem as global.
Yeah, so you speak about the industry, the global industry. If you look at the past, 15, 20 years in hospitality at very large, what has changed the most, would you say? Is it the tech? Is it the brand? Is it the guests? Is it something else? Or actually it hasn't changed that much in a way?
No, I think it has. It's definitely evolved, but it's evolved in a very interesting way. I like your question, and it requires, I think, a lot of reflection and thought. Number one, from an investment point of view, when I first started my career, most people who were investing in hospitality were hospitality specialists. Most people who invest in hospitality now are generalists. So, that shifted the equation, one. Two, I think our industry is more and more interconnected than it's ever been. Maybe a little bit more incestuous, but all these very big hotel companies, they have a lot of brands. We at Accor have almost 50, imagine. So there's been this proliferation, this growth, this added complexity, I would say. But on the other side, I think the industry, as with other industries, is going back to basics. I think the most successful brands are becoming purer. The technology, it's meant to facilitate things and ease things and make it more convenient. And I think the guest knows a little bit more what they want, and they're better informed, right? So also one of the greatest learning experiences of the last 3 years has been, and especially through Orient Express, is how you acquire guests, especially at that ultra luxury level, which was not a category that we were boxing in originally. at Accor. And that upper echelon, it really is evolving. And we're now taking a page out of the luxury retail playbook and consumer goods and hospitality, and it's all converging. So everything is shifting, but I think slightly. And it is important not to lose sense of the basics. Why are we doing things?
Yeah. But does it still make sense to do like these multi-year strategic plans, when you have this long-term vision and in 3 years, 5 years, you put dots on the map showing the portfolio is going to grow and all these kind of things in a world where really nobody knows what's coming up next week. Like, how do you even do strategy? Be for a portfolio of 50 plus brands, or just even for maybe a luxury one is easier. I don't know.
Or even personal.
Or even personal. What do you decide for yourself?
Yeah.
Where do you invest your time, your resources? Like, it's so volatile, isn't it? Like,
for sure.
How do you approach that?
Listen, my former boss, Richard Bloxham, used to love to refer to the North Star. I think we all need to know where we aspire to get to, but the fun of it, and it ties into Orient Express, is really the journey at the end of the day. But you need to have a goal. Of course, you need to know what the goal is. It's a little bit like special ops in the military. They understand what the mission is. How they get there, however, we won't know. They don't know what's going to be in front of them, what issues they're going to have, what challenges they're going to have, who's going to be with them. They have no idea, but they know exactly what the mission is. And when you know what the mission is, you can adapt. So, I guess it'd be like crossing the Atlantic, maybe from to the United States. The Atlantic is very wide, my friend. So it'll be somewhere in the water. And hopefully you will touch the other side and you will reach port. But I do think it's important for you to know where you want to go. But you need to have flexibility as well. And you need to be very, very adaptable. I think that's the key to success. You need to be adaptable and teachable.
How difficult is this? Because as a corporate slogan, I think it works clear. But once you go down on an industry that relies so much, on SOPs, on operational experience, all things which, the flexibility is there, but there is still a lot of rigidity in it for this to work. How hard is this?
I think
in reality?
Absolutely, that's the most challenging bit. And when you're looking to evolve a company and not and transform a company, and it's not change for the sake of changing. That's really no fun. That's silly. But you do need to form teams that are very diverse in mindset and experience. Nothing else. Honestly, the rest of the diversity bit, I don't buy. It's more diverse backgrounds, diverse ways of thinking, and just different viewpoints. I think it's very important. And you need to create an environment where it's very healthy to debate and challenge, not because you're taking the position of the opposition. It doesn't mean you say white, I say black, you say left, I say right. That's dumb. But if we create this environment full of trust, with where the basis is trust, and I present to you, Youri, an idea, and you say, meh, it's okay, Gilda, but have you looked at it this way? Or I actually saw something else being done. I need to be able to take that and be like, oh yeah, tell me more. Like, what do you mean? Let's work on it together. Because we know our mission. We're very clear as to what the end game is. And it's not about you. It's not about me. It's about the goal. I think that's very, very important. But you do need minds that work well in structure, but that are flexible enough to think about a new idea and are able to listen. And I think a lot of companies and people, it's human nature. The biggest mistake is we focus on the sunk cost. Oh, wow, well, we built this thing for years, so it's been done this way for years. That's a defeatist attitude with you. It starts with me. It starts with us at the end of the day.
I was about to say, it does require some different types of leadership and mindset at the top. That's for sure. Let's dig a little bit let's dive into Orient Express.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a big fan of Orient Express because I knew about it before I was even in that industry. I think it's such an iconic concept. Fundamentally, I think most people would only think train, and we'll speak about this after. And originally, the Orient Express, if I think the Agatha Christie moment, etc., is a lot about it's a luxury, but it's also a shared social experience where interesting people come together. And, I think this iconic dining party where everybody dresses up and come together in the evening. So it has that incredible storytelling built in. The reality today is people are buried in their phone, right?
Mm-hmm.
Can you actually preserve that spirit in the brand, that kind of
Yeah,
shared social luxury, or
I
not?
think you can.
Because, if you go to very fancy luxury hotels, people are still on their phone. You know what I mean? So, you go to I don't know, I don't want to name one, but like a very posh 5-star resorts, you arrive there, there's an infinity pool, it's beautiful, and people are just on their phone. What's your view on this? Can you should you preserve that original spirit, or how do you see that?
Of course you can. But by the way, I don't want to be a hypocrite. First thing I do when I wake up, I look at my phone. Last thing I do before I go to bed, I do look at my phone. Maybe I read a book, but it's amongst the second to last things I do before I go to sleep. What is so interesting is if you go back to when Orient Express was established in 1883, Orient Express was a challenger brand, and it was an entrepreneur, and he was very young. He was 38 years old. I don't know, maybe at the time he wasn't super young, but it's very young nonetheless. And he took an established product, a train, that maybe wasn't too efficient, wasn't too reliable, and which is what he got when he traveled to the United States, and he was inspired. And what he did is beautiful. It was the merger of two worlds and two disciplines. So he took the beauty and the artistry and the cultural element of Europe, that luxurious element that really one can truly find in Europe. There's something very special about it, with the efficiency, reliability, convenience of what he saw in the US. The US, it was convenient, but it was not comfortable. Here it was comfortable, but maybe not super convenient and not very efficient. So he wanted to he married the two. And therefore, the brand itself is a challenger brand, should remain a challenger brand. And it is a beautiful amalgamation of, it's a duality, right? It's art and science. You mentioned Agatha Christie. It's fact and it's fiction. There's a myth. How much of a myth is real? I don't know. It's the definition of a myth, right? And when Agatha Christie in 1934, now the brand had existed for a long time, for a while, since it started 83, in 34, the book came out, it added a completely different dimension. It became playful. It was great. And also the brand is as much a product as it is an experience. So think about how avant-garde that was. And it's something that we're 2026 now, and people are just discovering that. You look at all of these ultra luxury consumer brands, and now they want to have this whole experiential angle to it. And even it's lending itself to residential, to retail, airports, everybody's taking a book out of the hotel experiential play. So the brand, I think you hit the nail on the head. It is about that social experience. It's all about the human condition. And all Nagelmacher's created is he built the perfect stage.
Right.
Where the characters could play. And because of how the brand has evolved accidentally, purposely, it has so many dimensions, and that is what makes it so much fun. And that is also key to its success and sustainability. I mean, the fact that we're talking about it 143 years later and we're thinking about the next 100 years, I think it's very exciting. One thing that is really important, and it goes back to the beginning of our conversation, it tells us what the mission is, what the non-negotiable fundamental principles are, and that we need to follow them, and that we're only a little speck on a very long timeline, right? And I think that element of humility is really important.
And do people talk to each other at dinner?
They do, actually. It's funny. I was speaking to a guest who took the train for the first time, La Dolce Vita, this past weekend. And whilst he has been hearing about the project and now the asset for a while, when he was experiencing it, when he was describing it on the phone, the way he was describing it, I could see him, right? I think he was getting bigger, chest was getting bigger. He was so happy. And what he mentioned was the product was very nice, but, the experience was great. We made friends. We talked about the next trip. So you start as strangers, you finish as friends or acquaintances. It's okay. And the way, there's this concept of the grand transformation from morning to night, from daytime to sleep time. And I think, it also is a reflection of how relationships evolve on the train. And it's great. It's really fun.
Amazing. Yeah, it's a bit like, I don't know if you would see this as a parallel, but it's like how Ferrari owners blink at each other, or like when you travel business or even first class, people actually talk to each other
Yes.
because there's this notion that you are a selected group of people that have something to share in common.
Yeah,
But if
it's
you
a
fly,
networking.
it
It
has a networking basis
yes.
actually. Yeah,
Yes. We're social creatures at the end of
yeah,
the day. So what is for me the most fun to see is depending on where the guests are coming from or, their cultural norms, how long it takes for them to connect.
for sure. Yeah.
You have the Anglo they're born networkers. I've never seen anything like this. So I'll say,
And then you have the Swiss.
yeah. And then there's, there's the other extreme. Very funny, very interesting, but they all leave knowing each other very
Yeah,
well.
so good. Let's address maybe I don't know if it's the elephant in the room, but something
Mhm.
that I think is worth talking about. I mean, Orient Express, the company you are the CEO of, is actually a partnership at 50% with LVMH.
Mhm.
But there's also another Orient Express, which is basically called the Belmont's Venice Simplon Orient Express,
Yes, right.
basically, which is run by Belmont, one of your competitors. How does that work? Does that create some sort of friction? Also knowing that LVMH, your partner in one, is also the owner of, in a way, your direct competitors. I assume the man on the street doesn't even see this, doesn't even understand
No,
that. But for, hotel people that like to dig a little bit, you think, wait a second, how does that really, really work? Is this a source of friction, or can you play with
no,
this?
it's not. I don't think it's not a source of friction, but it is the source of many questions. I think if we were to do an FAQ, at least for as long as I've been with the group, that would be the number one question. I guess in 2024, which is when we did the agreement. But it is a strategic partnership. I would say, listen, it's been a privilege of a lifetime for Accor, inside Accor, hand in hand with LVMH. And by the way, talk about an opportunity and an experience for a non-French person to work with two very French, companies that are giants in their space. It's been both sides, it's very complementary. So Accor brings in the hospitality viewpoint. LVMH brings their, I would say, ultra luxury consumer practice, not theory, practice. How you acquire them, how you take care of them, how you keep them, how you grow them. By the way, also how you manage a brand. And whilst we do that, and we've done that for a very long time at Accor, and here I'll point out, we are extremely lucky at Accor in that we own the three Centennial brands in the luxury sector: the Centennial brand of North America, Fairmont; the Centennial brand of Europe, Orient Express; the Centennial brand of Asia, Raffles; and we have Pullman, which is one of our oldest brands. And so we're doing that. LVMH have many of those brands. I think they have 75 or so brands in their basket of companies. And so it's been really interesting to see both sides come together, to see the different viewpoints. I like when, we challenge each other. I do enjoy that very much. I think it's part of the sport that we're in. And so let's just say we've had very healthy discussions and debates, very productive. I don't, for the consumer at the end of the day, Youri, I don't think they know, they realize, they care. By the way, you throw out most of the companies outside, except for like a handful of exceptions. You've no idea who the CEO is. You've no idea where they're headquartered. You have no idea what the sister brands are. You don't care. You're loyal to that brand or that product. And so for the ultimate consumer, they're indifferent. I think the fact that, maybe some of the Accor guests is now exploring Orient Express, that's accretive. The fact that people see in the market that LVMH is there, that's like a stamp seal of approval. So it's great. Now, the story for the hospitality nerds, like us, the story is confusing and it is very peculiar, and it's beyond curious. So the existing Belmont portfolio used to be Orient Express until 2014. My understanding is at the time when the trademark rights expired, the leadership at the time of Belmont didn't think it necessary to continue with the name, and Belmont was created. Within that portfolio, which they have very beautiful trains, was one train that held the name. Part of its name is Orient Express, and they have that trademark for a long time, for a while. the Venice Simplon Orient Express, the VSOE, as we call it. And that train is very complementary to the trains that we have at the moment. It's positioned in, in a very precise way. And that positioning for all these trains, by the way, be it La Dolce Vita for us, or the VSOE for them, or the Royal Scotsman for them, the Eastern Oriental, the Andean Explorer, the British, whatever, Pullman, all the trains that they have. People will buy them based on a few things. One, routes. Two, positioning. So the experience on board La Dolce Vita is very different from the experience on board the Venice Simplon Orient Express. Venice Simplon Orient Express, even from a design point of view, is very, it's late 1800s, it's Belle Epoque, it's beautiful. It's a beautiful train, gorgeous. Like literally you're transported in time. And the way you behave there, as you mentioned, there'll be a very particular attire, is very different from La Dolce Vita, which the name says it all. It's very Italian. It's all about celebrating life, pleasure. It's loud, it's friendly. It's La Dolce Vita at the end of the day. That's what it is. So they're two very different trains. So I find them to be very complementary. There are the train aficionados who want to collect these trains. So I want to go to Peru. I want to go to Scotland. I want to try the new one that just came out at the Britannica. La Dolce Vita is really nice. So in that sense, it works. It's not really a competitor unless you're saying, I want to try a train for the first time, maybe in that sense. But the last thing I'll say is what is so good about it is Belmont, which is a completely separate company to Accor. They are doing such a good job that it's forcing us to do a great job, and then we're forcing them to do a great job. So at the end of the day, the consumer wins.
That's for sure, yeah. And I mean, if we look actually 1.5 years ahead, end of 2027, LVMH can be the big winner potentially, because as far as I can understand, they have the right to acquire full control of the Orient Express brand.
Yes, it's been publicly disclosed. They have have the rights to acquire the whole brand.
And I mean, like, without asking you to comment on obviously what's confidential, like, does it feel sometimes like, I don't know if I dare to say that, but like surrogate mother, or like, the nanny, where you have that baby, you're growing it, you're developing it, you're putting your heart in it. But you're from Accor, but maybe...
Yes and no.
And maybe at the end they become one thing together, the Belmont thing and the Orient Express. Maybe down the line, if LVMH deems interesting,
it's like,
how does it feel?
It's... I guess we all feel very different about it. We have a very big team of people who have worked on all the different divisions and stages of the project and now operating company of Orient Express, be it on the yachts, on the trains, on the hotels, and so forth. Nothing in life is permanent. So I don't know, that might be my Costa Rica Pura Vida approach. So I am just extremely content.
Yeah, you go with the flow.
To work on the project for a very finite period of time, finite. And I think there's something very nice in knowing, or disciplined, I don't know. It's not about me. It's not. And it's not about any one person, first, last name. It is about Orient Express. And so I am one of its custodians for a little bit of time. And that little bit of time, it's been a privilege of a lifetime. So I will always take it with me, but that's, I'm going to sound like really cheesy and beyond cheese. But I think it's important to say, when you truly love something or someone, you know that you don't own it. And I don't.
Your kids don't belong to you. You let them free.
They don't. They're their own. So I only control what I can do. The rest of it, it's been an honor, a privilege, and I'm forever grateful to Sebastian for giving me this opportunity.
And within what's in your control at the moment, I mean, you spoke about Dolce Vita train that launched last year. You have something that is the talk of the industry, the sailing yacht, the Corinthian, coming up. You have quite a lot of hotels in the pipelines. I mean, if you think Orient Express, most people would still today, I would assume, think train, but you are really taking the brand to something that's no longer relying on one type of assets. And you are becoming something closer to almost like a luxury ecosystem, because you speak a lot about destination, where you take the train, then you stay in one hotel, you take another train,
that's right.
Maybe you take the yacht. And, it's about, in a way, like the old school travel agent that, books every journey for you. But in that case, it's a curated environment. How do you evolve the narrative from luxury train, in a basic
Mhm.
way, to something that's more holistic in terms of experience? Because I
I
can
think
imagine
we
there's a
have,
discussion that you have internally.
yeah, they're not mutually exclusive. So we have people who, they're train aficionados and they only care about the train and they only want to do the train and they want to collect as many journeys on the train as possible and, complete their Rome to Venice, to Portofino, to
It's like the stamp.
Sicily.
They get the stamp
That's
a
it.
bit.
Exactly
Yeah,
right.
yeah,
And soon they're going to be able to go from Rome to Istanbul, right? As we
yeah.
discussed when we first met. So there's that. But there's other people who just want to be taken on an Orient Express journey. And so we have to craft it. And something that you said that is so true that I had no idea still existed, because my last interaction with them was probably early 90s, was travel agents. I thought it was a little bit of an extinct class, and I know that probably sounds extremely ignorant, but it's really true. And they are beyond sophisticated. And, there's this huge travel agency, travel advisor, as they're called now, travel advisor conglomerates who do everything and anything for clients, for families. The world has also evolved in terms of be like travel advisor, personal assistant. I mean, they know everything there is to know about this guest. So that B2B2C is something that has been really interesting to me. And we do work very closely with that side of the industry on Orient Express, very, very closely. And, of course, we're also going direct B2C, but some of these tickets, they can be pretty large if you're combining a yacht journey with the train, with a hotel, or you want to just fully charter the yacht for you and your friends, Youri, or the train. That's a very different transaction. But you're absolutely right in that we are the aim is to create this omni-channel travel, these travel ecosystems, for lack of a better word. And by the way, we're not being super creative here. Hotels existed as part of Orient Express in the past. They built them along the mythic route of Paris to Constantinople. There were hotels there. We're bringing back the hotels, but we added another asset class, which was our chairman's vision. So now we will have 2 sailing yachts.
Yeah. I think it's actually very interesting. In a way, it's kind of coming back to something that existed before, but in a world where, you can just book any luxury experience on booking.com. You just compare the infinity pool from one hotel to the next, and it feels so generic. First world problem for sure, but still. And I think what you guys are bringing is this notion of intention in the journey you do. And it's really about what you do and in which order. And that, I think, it's something that's actually is very defendable as a brand for you, at least my reading of it. Maybe it's talking about, building up destination brand. This question, it's a bit of a selfish question because, I'm very involved in things that involve into building up destinations, be a village, a large resort, etc. You're doing this, you're building up destinations, routes, you are putting on the map. You spoke about the Istanbul train, etc. If you had to give one piece of advice to someone who's trying to build new luxury destination brands from scratch today, what would it be in today's environment? What matters?
I think a few things. I think there's a general misconception that a brand is a logo, font, and a color palette, and it's not. Very specific SOPs, it's not. You need to have the ethos of the brand, which is really, again, those fundamental, non-negotiable principles about it. And it's almost like you have to be Machiavellian about those principles. You do not deviate from that. This is, and you protect it. You guard it with your life. That's it. Everything else can evolve, but the basic principles are there. The value system is there. And then you can decide, is this a good project? Should I consider this asset? Is this a good owner? Is this the right decision? Will it carry the brand for another decade or 100 years or whatever? 2, I think it's, for me, fascinating to see people, this world, or actually it's been fascinating to learn about the world of heritage brands, right? And obviously we're in the mecca of it, we're in Europe, and it's amazing to see brands or products that have been held in families for 300 years, 400 years, whatever it may be, or generation after generation. And so what makes that longevity possible. So that's another element of the brand. And there are these brands that have been dormant for a while that had very good brand equity that are being brought back. That's not to say that you cannot create a very successful brand from scratch, because as I said to somebody the other day, October of 1883 did have a day one. So we can have a day one now and, talk about it 143 years later. But we have to be very honest as to why we're doing things. That's what we got to answer. I think Cynic is very good about this. It starts with why. Why are we doing this? If it's just, if we're focused just on one dimension, just to make money, not to undercut, no, just for convenience, no. There's got to be this emotional appeal in a brand. And we don't only have to study hospitality brands. We can study many other successful brands and why they're so great. They're innovating. They make it all about the consumer. That makes you feel good. There's a call to action that you don't even have to hear it. You just feel it when you see the product, the good or the brand. I think that's really important. The point of view of destinations, you need to know what makes you unique. And we saw this when I was at JLS. After the pandemic or, after COVID, whatever the official date was, all of these destinations opened the gates at the same time. They opened the doors. They were back in business. And it was a very good moment of reckoning as to, okay, so what makes Venice special? Or any city, what makes Madrid special versus Rome versus New York versus London? And they had to build themselves a business plan and what made them unique. I'm very proud to say, as a Costa Rican, Costa Rica has always known its place in the market. We're an itty-bitty tiny nation. We've always trafficked in the nature side of things. Our country's super small, and yet a lot of it, 25% is protected rainforest. So imagine it's even smaller where you can actually go to. But we've always been true to that brand as far as I can remember. And the slogans and everything always communicated that. And we weren't going after volume. It was all about, it wasn't quantity, it was quality. And it was people who were going to be there to respect the environment and the destination and engage with the people, with the ticos. And I think it's the same thing in a hotel or in a hotel company. The last thing I will say is, I think Aman is one of the most successful brands, beautiful brands there are. And what Adrian Zecca did at the beginning is, how, I don't know. He holds the secret recipe. But he was incredible at building the sense of community, the Aman junkie, the diehard Aman and everybody else wants to do exactly the same.
Yeah, but it's hard. It's hard to do something when you copy. It's easier to do it when you stick to your guns and who you are. And I think your Pura Vida example is very strong. And it's not just a slogan for the country. People actually use this on the street.
Yes.
Pura Vida is super cool. Last question for you, and we always like to finish with a bit of a personal question in that podcast. What's the biggest mistake you've made in your career, and what did it teach you?
Oh my God, super good question, by the way. I feel like we need a beverage of our choice. But I will answer in a way that it's not meant, and I hope it does not sound arrogant. I don't believe I made any mistakes, Youri. I approach everything as a learning experience. And there's a saying in Spanish is que me quiten lo bailado. No one can take back an experience, really. And, very, very early in my career, I don't even know how old I was, maybe like 21 years old. I remember it was first job, this, that, the other. And I thought at the time I had, I could have done something different. And I read this book, The Art of Happiness, by the Dalai Lama at School of Thought. He said, they're all learning experiences. That's it. So now instead of thinking, oh, I failed in this, or oof, why did I do this decision? It's just more like, oh, okay, so I could have done this or this or that. Okay, the next time I know how to do this. I think that's a very nice way, an athletic way of approaching life. So no regrets. Everything has been really, really, really nice. I'm very grateful. Maybe that's the Latin American ever positive thinking, but it's been great. It's been really fun, and I had another boss who used to say all the time, half of life is showing up, Arthur Adler. And he's true. He's so right in this thing. You just got to show up. You got to do it. You got to say yes. Because you know what, Youri? You never know. And it was through this chance encounter that you and I met.
100%.
And imagine, this, again, it's the social nature of people, and you just got to put yourself out there.
You just have to show up.
You just got to show up.
Keep
Just got to
going.
do it. So no
Yeah.
mistakes. You never know.
Thanks a lot for those kind of words of wisdom for the end. And Gilda, thank you so much for joining our podcast today. It was fun and very insightful, and I liked so much your positivity overall.
Thank you, Youri. I appreciate it.
I'll definitely follow closely your news and look forward to seeing what else Orient Express has in store under your leadership. Thank you, Gilda.
Thank you.